He was the man who made the world laugh until it cried, the quicksilver genius who could improvise 1,000 voices in a single breath, the beloved actor whose eyes twinkled with mischief, warmth, and a hint of something deeper. But behind the applause and the awards, Robin Williams carried a story that few truly knew, a story of triumph, hidden heartbreak, and a legacy that still echoes long after his death. Tonight, we're going to pull back the curtain on Robin Williams' untold story, his loves, his struggles, the homes he left behind, the fortune he built, and the tragedy that shocked the world. To understand Robin Williams, you have to start at the beginning. Born in Chicago in 1951, he grew up in a privileged yet lonely environment. His father was a senior executive at Ford, his mother a former model. The young Robin often played alone in the family's mansion, inventing characters to keep himself company. That imagination became his survival mechanism, a way to fill the silence. Later, he would call himself the little fat kid who stayed in his room making up voices. Those voices became his superpower. Robin's path to stardom was meteoric. After studying at Juilliard alongside Christopher Reeve, he exploded into fame as the alien Mork in Mork and Mindy. Within a few short years, he was headlining stand-up comedy specials, performing to sold-out crowds who couldn't believe his speed or range. Hollywood soon came calling. Good Morning, Vietnam, Dead Poets Society, Mrs. Doubtfire, Good Will Hunting. Each role was a showcase for his emotional agility. He could switch from manic humor to soul-piercing sincerity in a heartbeat. Audiences adored him. Critics admired him. But Robin himself, he often felt like an outsider, never sure where the real person ended and the characters began. Behind the curtain, Robin's personal life was complex. He was married 3 times and had 3 children he adored. Yet rumors swirled for decades about a so-called love child, a claim that has remained the subject of speculation and tabloid headlines. The truth is simpler and sadder. Robin had an enormous capacity for love, but also an enormous fear of letting people down. He often buried himself in work, comedy, or substances rather than face the pain of fractured relationships. He was public about his battles with addiction in the late 1970s and again in the early 2000s. Even in recovery, he wrestled with depression, which he tried to mask with humor. Friends later said that Robin was the kindest person in the room, but also the loneliest. Robin's homes became physical symbols of his life's chapters. In the 1990s, at the height of his fame, he bought a breathtaking 640-acre estate in Napa Valley, California, which he called Villa Sorriso. Villa Havsmilesida had vineyards, olive groves, and sweeping views of the Mayacamas Mountains. But by 2012, he sold it, citing financial pressures after his divorces and a shrinking income as Hollywood shifted away from his style of films. He also sold his house in Tiburon near San Francisco, the place where he had raised his children. These abandoned homes told a silent story of a man who seemed to be downsizing his life, stripping away the trappings of celebrity in search of something simpler. At the same time, Robin continued to work. He voiced the genie in Aladdin, a role so iconic that Disney later said they would never replace his version. He starred in dramas like 1 Hour Photo and Insomnia, proving his dramatic chops. He toured as a stand-up, drawing on his own pain to fuel his humor. Audiences loved him, but those closest to him noticed he was getting tired. There were health issues, financial pressures, and the constant challenge of staying relevant in an industry obsessed with youth. Then came 2014. The world was shocked when news broke that Robin Williams had died at his California home at age 63. Initial reports said suicide. Later it emerged that Robin had been battling undiagnosed Lewy body dementia, a cruel neurodegenerative disease that can cause depression, paranoia, and hallucinations. His widow later described how he had been terrified, confused, and in physical pain in the months leading up to his death. The public had only seen the smiling mask. Few had seen the struggle behind it. His passing sparked a worldwide outpouring of grief from fellow comedians, actors, and millions of fans who felt they had lost a friend. And yet, even in death, Robin Williams left behind a legacy of laughter and generosity. His net worth at the time of his passing was estimated at around $50 million. But unlike many celebrities, he didn't just spend it on yachts or planes. Robin supported countless charities from St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital to Comic Relief, which raised millions for the homeless. He often performed unannounced at benefit shows, refused payment for certain appearances, and quietly visited sick children in hospitals dressed as his characters. His estate included royalties from his films, residuals from his stand-up specials, and investments he had made over decades. The division of his estate after his death became its own headline. There were disputes between his third wife and his children over properties and memorabilia. But those who knew him best said Robin's true wealth wasn't in real estate or bank accounts. It was in the generations of people he inspired. Actors who credit him for their careers, fans who say his movies saved their lives, comedians who saw in him a model of kindness and generosity. That's a net worth you can't measure in dollars. Looking back now in 2025, Robin Williams' story feels both timeless and cautionary. He achieved the American dream, only to discover that fame and fortune couldn't cure his inner battles. Yet at the same time, his life was also a testament to the power of art, humor, and empathy. He showed that comedy isn't just about punchlines, it's about connection. He took his own pain and turned it into joy for others. That's why his work still resonates today. A decade after his passing, there are details in his story that still shock people. The idea that a man so outwardly full of light could die in such darkness, the revelation that he sold off his beloved homes to cover alimony and lifestyle costs, the whispers about a secret child, the reality that even someone with a fortune of tens of millions could feel cornered and afraid. But these contradictions are also what make Robin Williams human. They remind us that behind every celebrity headline, there's a real person trying to navigate life. Imagine him now, in those final years, walking through the empty rooms of villas, looking at the vineyards, thinking of all the laughter that had filled those halls. Or imagine him quietly calling his kids, making jokes to hide his fear, still trying to be the strong one. It's heartbreaking, but it's also profoundly moving. Robin Williams gave so much of himself to the world that sometimes there was little left for him. And yet, his influence lives on. His children have continued his charitable work. His movies are still streamed, quoted, and loved. New generations are discovering his stand-up specials, his talk show appearances, his interviews where he slips into 10 characters at once. His voice as the genie still delights children who weren't even born when the movie came out. His performance in Dead Poets Society still inspires students to seize the day. His kindness stories paying for a stranger's hospital bill, or sending anonymous donations still circulate online, inspiring others to pay it forward. If you step back and look at the whole arc, Robin Williams' life mirrors the very characters he played. The misunderstood teacher, the magical friend, the clown with a broken heart, the father fighting for his children, the man searching for meaning. Each role was a piece of his truth. Each laugh he gave us came from a place of empathy. So when you hear the phrase, Robin Williams' untold story, it's not just about scandal or secrets. It's about understanding the man behind the myth, the boy who entertained himself in empty rooms, the young actor who exploded onto television, the superstar who bought a mansion called the Villa of Smiles and then let it go, the father who adored his kids, the comedian who could make Johnny Carson crack up and make presidents laugh, yet felt lonely in hotel rooms after the show, the philanthropist who never stopped giving, and finally, the man who left behind not just a fortune, but a lesson, that we never really know the battles someone is fighting, even when they seem to have it all. As we look back from 2025, Robin Williams' story is still unfolding in the hearts of those he touched. His death in 2014 was not an ending but the beginning of a larger conversation about mental health, about the hidden costs of fame, and about the need for compassion not just for celebrities, but for every human being who feels unseen. More than a decade has passed, yet his name still trends on social media. His words still appear in motivational posts, and his movies still show up on streaming platforms where new generations discover him for the first time. There is a strange, almost magical quality to Robin's work. It doesn't age. The humor feels spontaneous and fresh, even though it was recorded decades ago. The dramatic performances still sting with truth, and the interviews, those manic, breathtaking appearances where he would morph into 10 different characters within a single sentence, still rack up millions of views, reminding us of a time when late-night talk shows felt unscripted and alive. Part of what keeps Robin alive in 2025 is the way his films have become rituals. Families introduce their children to Mrs. Doubtfire, the way previous generations passed down fairy tales. High school teachers still show Dead Poets Society and watch their students sit silently through that final, devastating scene, then talk about what it means to seize the day. Couples still quote the genie from Aladdin to each other in goofy voices. His stand-up routines, raw, physical, absurd, and brilliant, still circulate in clips that make people laugh on their lunch breaks. In these ways, Robin Williams is still working. He's still giving us pieces of himself, long after he's gone. But his story now is bigger than entertainment. His death sparked something that rippled through Hollywood and beyond. After the shock wore off, there was a reckoning. People began to talk openly about depression, addiction, and neurodegenerative disease. The public learned about Lewy body dementia, a cruel lesser-known condition, because of Robin's struggle. Mental health organizations reported surges in donations. Celebrities began speaking about their own battles with mental illness, citing Robin's loss as a turning point. It was as if his death had broken a silence that had hung over the industry for years. Suddenly it was acceptable, even expected to say, "I'm not okay," and to ask for help. That may be one of Robin's most profound legacies, that in the years since, countless tributes have been built in his honor. Murals in San Francisco and Chicago, scholarships for young performers, benefit concerts where comedians share their own stories between sets. A bench in Boston, made famous by a scene in Good Will Hunting, became an impromptu memorial site, covered in handwritten notes, flowers, and quotes from the film. Tourists still visit that bench today, quietly sitting where Robin once sat in character, reflecting on life's big questions. In this way, his memory isn't just static, it's living. It's part of the cultural landscape. For his children, his legacy has a different weight. They lost a father, not just a public figure. In interviews they have described how they still feel him guiding them, how his advice continues to resonate. They've supported projects in his name, launched mental health initiatives, and worked to ensure his philanthropic commitments continue. When they speak of him, it's not about the money or the fame. It's about his humor around the dinner table, his habit of calling just to say he loved them, his ability to make even mundane moments magical. In 2025, they are adults navigating their own paths, but they carry his influence in their choices. Even the homes he once owned, the Villa Sorriso in Napa Valley, the Tiburon house overlooking the bay, have become symbols. After his death, real estate agents described prospective buyers walking through those halls whispering about Robin's spirit. Some properties were turned into retreats or event spaces. Others were renovated and sold, but fans still drive by to take pictures, as if the walls themselves absorbed some of his energy. His possessions have become part of auctions and museum exhibits. Yet paradoxically, his true presence seems to have migrated into the digital space, into clips, memes, and documentaries, where it can't be locked away or sold. Financially, Robin left behind an estate estimated at around $50 million. But money was never the most interesting part of his story. He gave away much of his time, and often his wealth, to causes he believed in. In 2025, people continue to discover stories of his quiet generosity, visiting children's hospitals in costume without a press entourage, paying the tuition of a young comic who is struggling, or sending anonymous donations to disaster relief funds. These stories surface like hidden treasures, adding to the legend of a man whose public persona was matched by private kindness. His net worth in dollars may be finite, but his net worth and impact is incalculable. Looking back from today, it's impossible not to notice how Robin Williams anticipated the conversations we're having now about authenticity, mental health, and vulnerability. Long before it was trendy, he spoke about his struggles. Long before social media demanded celebrities be real, he was real, sometimes painfully so. Watching old interviews now, you can see the tension, the manic brilliance on the surface, the flicker of sadness underneath. It makes his performances even more powerful. It makes his jokes land differently. They're not just jokes, they're lifelines. His quote, "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind," always has become a mantra. It appears on coffee mugs, t-shirts, and inspirational posts. But more importantly, it's become a guiding principle for people who saw themselves in his pain. Teachers cite it to their students. Therapists hang it in their offices. Fans leave it on his memorials. In 2025, that line feels like the summation of a decade of cultural shifts. Be kind, always, because you never know. Robin Williams' story also stands as a reminder of the limits of fame and wealth. Here was a man who could make presidents laugh, who had a fortune and a mansion, who won Oscars and Golden Globes, yet who still felt cornered by illness and despair. In a world obsessed with celebrity lifestyles, his life forces us to ask harder questions about what truly matters. Connection, purpose, health, love. Those were the things he cherished in his private life. Even as his public life revolved around movies and money, by 2025, fans don't just admire him for his talent. They admire him for his humanity, for his flaws, for his willingness to be vulnerable. Consider how his movies read differently now. In Good Will Hunting, his character tells a young genius that true knowledge comes from lived experience, from loss and love, not from books. In Dead Poets Society, he urges his students to seize the day, knowing full well how quickly life can pass. In Mrs. Doubtfire, he portrays a father willing to transform himself just to be close to his kids. In each of these roles, he's not just acting. He's revealing something of himself, his values, his fears, his hopes. When audiences rewatch these films in 2025, they're not just enjoying a performance, they're communing with a man who understood life's fragility. The cultural memory of Robin Williams also ties into a larger shift in how we view celebrity. In the old model, stars were distant gods. Now, especially after the pandemic years, people crave authenticity. Robin seems to have been ahead of his time in offering it. His unpolished interviews, his willingness to show up at small comedy clubs, his refusal to adopt the aloofness of many Hollywood A-listers, all of that resonates even more now. He wasn't a brand. He was a person. And in 2025, that's what makes him timeless. Even his humor feels instructive now. Watch a Robin Williams stand-up routine, and you'll see a man in constant motion, riffing, sweating, improvising like jazz. But you'll also see an undercurrent of empathy. His jokes rarely punch down. He celebrated human absurdity rather than mocking human weakness. He was political but not cruel. He was outrageous but also strangely gentle. In an era of polarized comedy, his style seems almost radical. The idea that you could be funny and kind at the same time. Robin's influence also extends into the world of philanthropy, comic relief. The charity telethon he co-hosted with Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg raised millions for homeless people and families in crisis. In 2025, that template comedians using their platforms for large-scale fundraising is now standard. Netflix specials for charity, live streams for causes, comics auctioning experiences for nonprofits, all of that owes something to Robin Williams and his generation. He showed that comedy could do more than entertain. It could heal. For all these reasons, when we speak of Robin Williams in 2025, we're not just reminiscing. As we look back from 2025, Robin Williams' story is still unfolding in the hearts of those he touched. His death sparked new conversations about mental health, about the hidden costs of fame, and about the need for compassion. His films and performances remain timeless. His jokes still circulate on social media. His interviews still get millions of views. In his legacy, the laughter, the generosity, the vulnerability is bigger than any headline about money or property. Robin Williams once said, "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always." In many ways, that quote has become his epitaph, the truest summary of his life, because despite everything, the rumors, the losses, the illnesses, he stayed kind. He stayed funny. He stayed giving, and that's why, even now, he's still with us. Disclaimer: the content in this video is based on publicly available information, media sources, and opinions. It is created for entertainment and educational purposes only. We do not claim or guarantee that every detail is 100% accurate.